This happened about 2 weeks ago. I'm 34 years old and I work as a freelance sound engineer. I usually spend my days in my messy apartment filled with old audio gear and vinyl records. I love finding rare lost recordings. That's when I stumbled across the NASA files. One file caught my eye. Apollo 11, June 20th, 1969. I figured it could be interesting. I didn't realize it would change everything. When I hit play, the familiar voices of Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong filled the room. But then I started to hear strange murmurs underneath their chatter. At first, I thought it was just a problem with the recording, but my curiosity got the better of me. I listened more closely, and the whispers grew louder. Every time the astronauts faced tension, the whispers intensified. I felt a shiver down my spine, but I told myself it was just my imagination. I had to find out what this was about. Days went by, and I became obsessed. I listened for hours trying to catch the whispers. They transformed from random noise to something more distinct. I felt like they were trying to tell me something. My lights began flickering at odd hours, and my old radio would crackle with static. It felt odd, almost timed to the recordings. My friends noticed I was on edge. They told me to take a break and get some rest. I should have listened, but I couldn't step away. At night, the whispers became a constant presence. Sometimes I thought I heard my name. I would sit in silence, waiting for them to speak, but it felt like I was chasing a shadow. I started hearing strange things outside my apartment too. Footsteps in the hallway, faint whispers. But every time I checked, there was nothing there. I didn't want to tell anyone. I feared they'd think I was going crazy. Then one night, as I sat in my dark apartment, the city outside was quiet. I pressed play again. The astronauts were talking about a technical issue when suddenly, it happened. The whispers peaked. I felt a chilling presence behind me, like someone was standing there watching me. I turned quickly, but there was no one. My heart raced. I glanced back at the recording, then I swear I heard it clearly. A voice from the recording said, "They are watching." I stumbled back from my desk. The lights flickered violently, and I felt cold all over. I had never felt fear like that. What did it mean? Why did I feel so alone? Now, as I sit here, I can't shake that moment from my mind. I want to tell myself it was just paranoia or stress, but deep down, I wonder if it was something more. I think about the whispers constantly. Are they still there? I can't go back to that recording. What if whatever tied to that audio is still watching? I don't know. All I know is that something dark is lurking just beyond reach. The next day, I grabbed a coffee and tried to center myself. I needed to focus on something else. So, I decided to visit my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. She was an elderly woman who knew a lot about the area. Maybe she could shed some light on any strange happenings in the building. I knocked on her door, and she answered with a curious smile. "Hello, dear. You don't usually stop by. Everything all right?" I forced a smile back. "Yeah, just thought I'd check in." We sat in her cluttered living room. Family photos lined the walls, and the smell of old books filled the air. I brought up the noises I'd been hearing. "Have you noticed anything odd around here?" Her expression shifted slightly. "Odd? Like what?" "I don't know. Footsteps at night, strange whispers. Just things that feel out of place." Mrs. Thompson considered this. "You know, when I moved in 20 years ago, the previous tenant left in a hurry. Rumors had it he was doing some interesting research." I leaned forward. "What kind of research?" She lowered her voice, glancing at the window as if to check for eavesdroppers. "Something about sound. He used to experiment with recordings, tapes from the moon missions, possibly. I always found it suspicious. Sometimes at night I could hear strange noises. It was like whispers, too." A cold wave washed over me. The hairs on my neck stood up. "How long did this go on?" "Only a few months. Then he just vanished and no one really talked about it after. But I've always kept an eye on that apartment, you know? Something about it still gives me the creeps." I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a coincidence. Was there a connection between my recordings and what Mrs. Thompson had experienced? I thanked her for the information and left her apartment, my mind racing. Back in my space, I felt a familiar unease settle in. The whispers I had recorded could have a deeper origin. I picked up my laptop and opened a new file, research about the previous tenant. Maybe he wasn't just a random name in the building's history. As I scrolled through the details, I stumbled onto something disturbing. There was a mention of his work being linked to a government project. My heart pounded. A flood of questions coursed through my mind. What was he trying to uncover? And why would the government be interested in old moon tapes? Suddenly my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number read, "Stop digging." My stomach dropped. The urge to explore the truth warred with a surge of fear. I glanced at the door. Was someone watching me again? I could feel their gaze, heavy and unyielding. Then, everything went dark. The power flickered out, leaving me in a suffocating silence, surrounded by shadows. I gripped my phone tightly, the glow of the screen my only source of light. My heart raced. I remember a saying, "What is hidden will always come to light." But what if this light revealed something too dark to face? I sat in the darkness, my screen illuminating my trembling hands. The silence felt oppressive, a weight pressing down on my chest. I thought about the warning. Whoever sent that text wasn't just an annoyed neighbor. They wanted me to stop. Taking a deep breath, I called my friend Alex. He was a tech guru and could help me sift through the recordings I'd made. If there was anything strange hidden there, he'd find it. The call rang, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a hurried message, asking him to call me back. With every minute that passed, I felt more isolated. I stood up and glanced out the window. My neighbor's lights were on, a small comfort. But as I tried to shake off the feeling of dread, something caught my eye across the street. A figure standing under a street lamp. I squinted, trying to see clearly. Whoever it was, they were just standing there, staring. I ducked away from the window, the cold creeping into my bones. Was I just being paranoid? I could chalk it up to the power outage, but a nagging feeling told me this wasn't just my imagination. After a few moments, I decided to check if my flashlight still worked. I rummaged through the drawer and found it, dusty but functional. I switched it on, a weak beam cutting through the dark. I took a deep breath again, then instructed myself to look at the recordings on my laptop. The glow of the screen didn't offer the comfort I thought it would. I opened the file where I had stored the audio. I hit play, trying to focus on the sound rather than the tension bubbling under my skin. But all I heard were garbled voices, no clear words. Still, the words felt charged, laden with urgency. Laden. I adjusted the volume and listened harder. Suddenly, amidst the static, I picked up faint whispers that sounded familiar. "Help us. Not safe. Find it." The hair on my arms stood up. Who were they warning? And what was I supposed to find? My phone buzzed again, but this time it was Alex. "Hey, I just got your message. You okay?" "I'm not sure. Something's happened, and I need your help with these recordings." I explained my fears and rushed through what Mrs. Thompson had said. "Wait, tapes from the moon?" he said. "That sounds familiar. Remember the audio leak from Apollo 11 that stirred up conspiracy theories? People swore they heard something odd in the background. I thought it was just a hoax." I froze. "They thought it was a hoax?" "Yeah, apparently it's been dismissed. But if there are other recordings out there, I might have stumbled onto something. But people are watching me, Alex. I can't just sit here." "Then don't. Meet me at the cafe. We'll delve into this together." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Okay, but I'll have to be quick." I gathered my things, stuffing the laptop into my backpack. I unlocked the door quietly, peeking outside. The figure was gone. I felt exposed in the corridor as I made my way down the stairs. Did they leave, or were they following me? Just as I got to the front door, a noise echoed from behind me, faint but unmistakable. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate. "Who's there?" I called, trying to sound braver than I felt. No answer came, just silence. I stepped outside into the cool night, heart racing. I had to get to the cafe and figure out what this all meant. But the feeling that I was being hunted clawed at me. I rushed into the street, but something told me that whatever I uncovered next was going to drag me deeper into a web I couldn't escape. I sprinted down the street, trying to shake the feeling of eyes on me. The night felt too still, too quiet for comfort. Streetlights flickered as I passed, their weak glow offering little reassurance. I could almost hear the echo of those whispers from the recording, playing in my mind like a taunting chorus. The cafe wasn't far, but with every step I felt like I was racing against something lurking behind me. I cast a glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see that same figure emerging from the shadows. But there was nothing. Just the empty street stretching behind me. When I reached the cafe, I pushed the door open and was greeted by a warm burst of light and chatter. It felt like stepping into another world. I quickly scanned the room, searching for Alex, who was already seated at a corner table, hunched over with his laptop open. "Hey!" he called out, waving me over. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I slid into the seat, trying to catch my breath. "You have no idea. Are you sure it's safe to be here?" "Yes," he said, glancing around, then leaned closer. "Tell me everything. Start from the beginning." I recounted the events of the night, the figure, the strange recording, and Mrs. Thompson's frantic warning. As I spoke, I noticed the barista casting curious glances our way. I lowered my voice, darkening the surrounding noise. "There's something more. I think I'm onto something big, Alex. But it's dangerous." He nodded, his expression serious. "First thing we need to do is analyze your audio recording. Let's see what we can dig up." I opened my laptop and pulled up the file, feeling my pulse quicken. "Listen closely. I think you'll hear it." I pressed play, and the familiar garbled sounds filled the air. Alex leaned in, intensity dawning in his eyes. "Wait, go back. Right there," he said, as the faint words floated through the static. "Help us. Not safe." I rewound it, my heart racing. "What does it mean?" "It sounds like distress signals, but from whom? And who was trying to warn you?" I felt a chill creep up my spine. The questions just keep multiplying. And I'm scared that the more we dig, the more danger we'll attract. Before Alex could respond, the cafe door swung open, and a gust of cold wind rushed in. My eyes shot to the entrance. A group of 3 men stepped inside, their faces obscured by dark hoods. They scanned the room, then locked eyes with mine. "Alex, we need to go, now," I urged, panic flooding my voice. He barely had time to protest before we got up, but the men were already moving toward us. I felt the urgency in my veins. Whatever was happening was real and closing in fast. Then everything went dark. The power flickered, plunging the cafe into shadows. I grabbed Alex's arm, adrenaline taking over as chaos erupted. "What's happening?" he shouted, but I didn't have time to answer. We bolted for the exit, a mass of bodies and confusion. But just as we reached the door, disaster struck. A loud crash rang out, and I realized that we weren't going to escape so easily. Someone was blocking our way. I could barely see in the dim light, but I could make out the silhouette of a man standing in front of the door. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and exuded an air of danger. My heart raced as I felt the surge of terror clawing at my throat. "Get back!" I shouted, pushing Alex behind me. The men in hoods were closing in on us, their eyes fixed on our every move. The tension was palpable, and I could hear the chaos of the cafe swirling around us. The sound of nervous chatter, chairs scraping against the tile floor, and the distant blare of sirens. "Where do you think you're going?" the man at the door growled, his voice low and threatening. "You need to come with us." "Not a chance," I responded, my voice shaky but firm. I glanced around, frantically searching for another exit. Cafe patrons cried out, and I spotted a window at the far corner. It was a long shot, but desperation drove me. "Follow me," I yelled to Alex, and just as we turned, a thick arm reached out and grabbed my wrist, yanking me back. "Leave her alone," Alex shouted, lunging forward. "Stop! Don't!" I screamed as I felt the grip tighten. The world around me turned into a blur. Moments felt like hours as Alex and I struggled against the growing chaos. I kicked back at the assailant and he momentarily flinched. In that split second, I broke free. "Run!" I yelled and dashed for the window. I heard the glass shatter as I hurled myself through, desperate to escape the arm grasping at my shoulder. I landed on the grass outside, scraping my hands and knees. Pain shot through me, but I couldn't think about that now. I scrambled to my feet and looked back. Alex was right behind me, his face pale but determined. "Come on," I urged, and we sprinted down the alley behind the cafe. The sound of footsteps followed us almost immediately. I could see dim lights bobbing in the distance. Those men were coming after us. "Where do we go?" Alex panted, glancing back nervously. "Anywhere but here," I replied, trying to suppress the rising panic. We turned another corner, spotting a wrought iron fence at the end of the alley. I grabbed the cold metal and hoisted myself up, then reached down for Alex. He clambered over just as I heard voices approaching. There was no time to lose. We dashed into the next street, merging into the shadows, breathing hard. "Do you think they saw us?" I asked, glancing back down the alley, expecting to see the men emerge, but there was only darkness. "I don't know, but we need to hide," Alex said, urgency etched into his features. "We should find somewhere safe and figure out our next move." That was when I noticed something on the ground. A small dark object glinted under the streetlight, the recording device I thought I had lost. I bent to pick it up, a sense of dread washing over me. "Alex, this is the last thing I need right now," I murmured. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it held the key to understanding everything that was happening. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Quickly, I took it out and froze. The screen displayed an unknown number. The urge to answer was overwhelming. Did they know something? Could they help? I stared at the device, heart pounding, caught between my instinct to find answers and the fear of what could happen next. I felt the weight of the phone in my palm, the unknown number pulsing like a warning in my head. What if it was connected to the men who were chasing us? But what if it was someone who could help? "Answer it," Alex urged, glancing nervously over his shoulder. The footsteps were fading, but I could still feel the tension in the air. I swiped the screen and pressed the phone to my ear. "Hello?" My voice trembled, hardly above a whisper. Static crackled before a voice broke through, low and distorted. "You're in danger. They know you have it." "What are you talking about?" I managed to choke out, my heart racing. "Who is this?" There was a long pause. "Just trust me. You need to meet me. The abandoned warehouse on River Street. Now." Before I could respond, the line went dead. My mind raced as I stared at the phone, the urge to dismiss the entire call gnawing at me. But then Alex's voice cut through my thoughts. "Who was it?" he asked, his eyes wide with fear. I don't know," I admitted, trying to keep my voice steady. "They say they know we have something important." "Something important? Like the recording device?" he asked, glancing at the object still clutched in my other hand. "Maybe." I felt a shiver run down my spine. They must know about it. But do we trust this person? "I think we should," Alex said, determination creeping into his voice. "We can't stay here forever. If those guys find us, they won't stop until they get what they want." I finished for him, a knot forming in my stomach. "We have to move. Where is this warehouse?" He surveyed our surroundings as if debating our next steps. "It's just a few blocks from here, but we'll have to be cautious," I replied. "We can't take any chances." We turned down a dark street, the flickering streetlights barely illuminating our path. With each step, my heart raced. I knew I was taking a huge risk, and I could feel the weight of the recording device pulling me down. As we walked, I replayed the call in my mind. Why did they think we had something important? And what were those men really after? Then as we rounded a corner, I spotted movement ahead. My pulse quickened. "Alex! Over there!" A figure stood under the dim light of the warehouse sign, their face obscured by the shadows. "Who is that?" Alex whispered, instinctively taking a step back. "I don't know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but my fingers tightened around the recording device. The intensity of the moment was almost suffocating. "Do we go?" Alex asked, uncertainty lacing his words. Before I could respond, the figure stepped forward, revealing a familiar face. My breath caught in my throat. The person stood there, eyes wide with urgency. "Why are you here? They'll know you came," the figure said, their voice edged with panic. "Who are you?" I demanded, confusion flooding my thoughts. "Everything depends on this," they said, glancing around nervously. "We have to go now." Suddenly I heard the sound of footsteps again, drawing near, and my stomach dropped. "Alex, we need to make a decision, now." That's when I saw it, a shadow lurking just beyond the warehouse entrance, a stark reminder that this was only the beginning of our nightmare. The figure stepped closer, and I squinted to get a better look. It was Jamie, a classmate from a few years back. I couldn't quite grasp how she ended up here or why she seemed so frantic. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice low. "They're coming," she hissed, looking wildly over her shoulder. "We have to move. You don't have much time." "What do you mean coming? Who are you talking about?" I felt a nagging fear creeping in. This was all too much too fast. "They know about the recording," Jamie explained hurriedly. "You shouldn't have called. Now they're tracking you." "What?" I felt my mind racing. "How do you know about the recording?" She took a step forward, gesturing urgently for us to come closer. "That doesn't matter right now. If you have it, they'll stop at nothing to get it. We need to get inside the warehouse. It's safer." "Safer?" Alex shot back, skepticism spilling into his voice. "How do we know we can trust you?" I glanced at Alex, feeling torn. The shadows flickered like they were closing in, and my instinct was to run. But something in Jamie's eyes struck me, an urgency that felt real. "Please, just trust me for once," she pleaded, glancing back at the street where the footsteps had grown louder. "Fine," I exhaled, taking a leap of faith. But this better not be a trap. We moved into the darkened entryway of the warehouse, wide open doors beckoning us inside. The air was stale, filled with the scent of rust and something else. I couldn't quite place it. I pulled my phone from my pocket, hoping the dim light would help me see. "This way," Jamie urged, leading us further into the shadows. I hesitated, my senses alert. Who could really trust anyone in a moment like this? But I followed anyway. As we neared a cluster of crates, Jamie turned to us, her expression now serious. "You need to understand something. What you recorded is more than just random conversations. It's proof of something much bigger." "Proof of what?" Alex pressed. She hesitated, the tension thickening. "I can't say too much here. But it's about the Apollo missions. Things that were never disclosed. They're trying to bury the truth." A chill settled in my bones. Bury the truth? Thoughts of uncharted conspiracies began to swirl in my mind. If they wanted the recording bad enough to chase us, it couldn't be good. "Why do we need to hide?" I asked, fighting to maintain composure. "Because they're already looking for you, and they won't stop until they find what you have," Jamie replied, her urgency escalating. Before I could respond, a loud bang echoed from outside the warehouse, followed by the sound of footsteps racing toward us. My heart dropped. "Get down!" I shouted, pulling Alex and Jamie behind a stack of crates. The door swung open, and a group of men stormed in, scanning the room. I could barely breathe as they advanced, shadows swallowing any escape route. Then someone shouted, "They're in here!" Everything felt surreal, the gravity of our situation crashing in on me. And just like that, I realized we had to act fast. We had to make a plan or risk being caught. As I strained to hear what the men were saying, I caught snippets of conversations that made my blood run cold. They weren't just after the recording, they were after us. "Let's split up," one of them urged, and panic surged through me. It was now or never. We had to make a move, and taking a step deeper into the shadows felt like our last chance to escape. Just then, a sharp sound interrupted my thoughts. A loud crash echoed from the far end of the warehouse. My heart raced. Had they entered through another door? "Stay quiet," Jamie whispered, her eyes wide. She pulled out a small flashlight, flicking it on and off as if testing its battery. The faint beam illuminated just enough for me to see her worried face. Alex's grip tightened around my arm. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Follow me," Jamie urged, her voice steady despite the tension. We slid around the crates, keeping low, inching away from the noise. The men were moving closer, their footsteps heavy and deliberate. "Did you hear that?" one of them said, his voice rough. "Check the back." I felt a wave of terror wash over me as they started to move in our direction. We had to find a way out. "Over here," Jamie pointed to a stack of large pallets. "We can hide behind those." We scrambled behind the pallets, crouching low as the footsteps drew near. My mind raced. I couldn't shake the thought of being found. The weight of the recording felt heavier in my pocket, a reminder of what was at stake. The men entered our section of the warehouse, their voices sharp. "There's gotta be a way they could have escaped." "Let's split up," one ordered again. "Check the upper levels." "Wait," another voice protested. "What if they have—" The rest of the sentence was cut off as the men advanced further away. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my racing heart. I risked a glance around the pallets to see where they were going. They were scanning the area, peering over crates, searching for anything that moved. "This isn't working," Jamie muttered. "They're not going to give up that easily. We couldn't remain in hiding forever." Then, a thought struck me. "What if we create a distraction?" I suggested, my voice low. "How?" Alex whispered back, urgency clawing at his words. "Those crates over there." I nodded toward a stack that looked unstable. "If we knock them over, it'll draw their attention." "Are you insane?" Jamie shot a look at me, but I could see the gears turning in her mind. "It's either that, or wait to be found," I replied firmly. "We need a chance to get out of here." "Okay, let's do it," she finally agreed. We crept towards the crates, trying to keep our movements silent. My heart pounded as I reached for the nearest crate, ready to push it with all my strength. "On the count of 3, I whispered. 1, 2. Before I could finish, the warehouse suddenly plunged into darkness. The lights overhead flickered violently, then went out completely. The abrupt silence felt suffocating. "Run!" Jamie shouted. In the pitch black we stumbled, trying to feel our way back to the entrance. I could hear the men calling out, but they were lost in the chaos. That's when I felt it. A hand reaching out, grabbing my shoulder. I jerked away, panic flooding through me. "Wait! It's me!" Jamie's voice cut through the darkness, but I couldn't shake off the surge of fear. "Where do we go?" Alex said urgently. "Towards the exit, just move," Jamie urged. The sound of footsteps grew louder again, and I realized we didn't have much time. We had to get out before they found us in the dark. But as we sped away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something worse awaited us beyond the warehouse doors. We dashed forward, our feet stumbling over debris. The air was thick with dust, and I could barely hear myself think over the pounding of my heart. We needed to make it to the exit, but I had no idea where it was in this blackness. "Keep moving," Jamie shouted again. I trusted her voice, gripping Alex's hand tightly. I hoped we were headed in the right direction, but fear twisted my stomach. A sudden crash echoed behind us, followed by a shout. "They're escaping! Get them!" The men were charging after us, their voices a mix of anger and urgency. I felt a surge of adrenaline and pushed myself forward. We reached a wall and I stumbled as I tried to feel for a door. My fingers brushed over rough wood before finally finding the handle. I turned it quickly, half expecting it to be locked. My heart sank when it didn't budge. "Is it locked?" Alex panted, panic rising in his voice. "No, just stuck." I pushed harder, but it wouldn't open. "We need to find another way." Just then, I heard their footsteps nearing. My mind raced. There had to be a window or another exit somewhere. "This way!" I shouted, pulling Alex and Jamie to the right. We moved along the perimeter of the warehouse, feeling for any way out in the dark. Suddenly, Jamie gasped. "Look!" She pointed ahead. I squinted into the darkness. It was a faint light, flickering from a small window near the ceiling. We might be able to reach that, I said, hope igniting within me. Help me boost you up, Jamie offered, kneeling. I knelt beside her as Alex climbed onto my shoulders, straining to lift him higher. You've got this. Alex stretched toward the window, but it was just out of reach. I can't, he groaned. Just a little more, I urged, my muscles straining beneath his weight. Then came the footsteps again, louder and closer. They were right on us. With a surge of desperation, I pushed up harder. This time, Alex grabbed onto the edge of the window and pulled himself up. I'm in, he yelled, relief flooding his voice. Now help us, Jamie urged. But I felt a panic swell when I glanced over my shoulder. A figure was emerging from the darkness. One of the men. He spotted us immediately, eyes narrowing as he spotted Alex at the window. Hey, over here, he shouted. Go, 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 I yelled, pushing Jamie up next. The man was moving quickly and I felt time slipping away. I gave Jamie a final boost, and she grasped the windowsill, kicking her legs until she swung her body inside. Come on, Alex called down, his voice rising above the charged atmosphere. I could hear the man approaching, his footsteps echoing off the walls. Before I could climb, I felt a hand on my ankle, a rough grip yanking me back. I gasped as I was pulled down. No, I screamed, flinging my arms up in defense. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of his face, a twisted sneer as he lunged toward me. Panic surged inside, and I kicked back fiercely, but he didn't let go. Then, just as I thought he would drag me down, a loud creak pierced the air. The overhead lights flickered back on, illuminating the chaos, just as he finally lost his grip. I scrambled, leaping for the window. That's when I heard it, a crackling sound coming from my pocket. The recording, it was activating. And then I realized, the truth was about to spill out in a way I never expected. I barely made it through the window, landing hard on the floor of the warehouse's dark interior. Alex and Jamie were there, breathless and wide-eyed. Did you see him? Alex panted, clenching the edge of the window. His face was pale, but there was determination in his eyes. Yeah, I exhaled, trying to catch my breath. We need to find a way out of here before they catch up. My heart raced, and still, I could feel the weight of the recording device pressing against me. Over here! Jamie pointed to a doorway at the back, a faint light spilling through the gaps. We sprinted toward it, moving silently as we could in our frantic state. I could still hear the men shouting behind us, but the chaos felt far away, pushing me to focus on survival. As we dashed through the doorway, we entered a narrow corridor lined with old crates and broken machinery. My eyes widened at the faint glimmers of light cutting through the darkness. An exit, maybe. We pressed on, the urgency growing stronger. Suddenly my phone buzzed again, an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. Glancing at it, something felt instinctually wrong. Voices shouted in the distance, and I could sense the looming threat. Not now, I muttered under my breath, silencing it. Finally, we burst through another door, tumbling out into an open space beside a loading dock. The air felt alive with a crisp energy, but it came to me in waves of unease. We could see the streetlights flickering under the night sky. We made it! Alex exclaimed, relief washing over his face. But just then, I felt that creeping sensation again. The eyes watching, the unresolved danger looming behind us. What's the plan? Jamie asked, glancing back towards the warehouse where the shouting had grown more frantic. We should disappear, I said, my instincts leaning toward caution. Spread out. Meet later. The idea felt reckless, and every fiber of my being screamed against the thought of separating. Before I could change my mind, the sound of screeching tires sliced through the air as a dark car sped around the corner. My heart dropped. They're coming, I urged instinctively, urgency coloring my voice. We scrambled in different directions, darting into the shadows of the dimly lit streets. I heard Jamie call out for us, a panicked note lacing her voice, but I kept running. Adrenaline took over, propelling me forward. I ducked into an alley to my right, pressing my back against the cool brick wall. Time blurred. The sound of my own racing heart eclipsed all else. I breathed heavily, trying to replay the events in my mind. The whispers I heard, the warning calls, everything that had spiraled outside my control. It all came rushing back. I could feel something incredible had been triggered, something I had yet to understand. Faint footsteps echoed, and I shoved the recording device into my pocket again, unsure if it was a burden or my lifeline. Was that voice just static, or was it something more? A distant memory barely within reach. Did it matter now? Peering around the corner, I saw shadows moving toward my direction but held my ground. As tension coiled in my chest, I clicked the screen open again, my instincts prompting me. The playback function was activated. Would I finally hear something, anything, that could untangle this mess? Then it hit me, a whisper, the same one from before. "They're watching." I froze, realizing with a chill that this wasn't just a warning, it was a promise. The ground felt shaky beneath me as I processed what this could mean. Had I stumbled across something that was never meant to see the light of day? Suddenly, a sharp light gleamed across the alley, and I ducked back just in time. The car had stopped. I could hear voices, not angry or threatening, but low and almost conspiratorial. "Did you see them?" one of the men asked, edging closer. "No, but they have to be around here," another replied, their footsteps nearing. My lungs felt constricted as a rush of panic tempted me to dart away, to abandon this dark path entirely. But a part of me hungered for the truth. I had to escape, yes, but what if I could unravel the very essence of those whispers? My mind swirled, teetering on the edge of instinct and discovery. I waited, listening closely as the men moved dangerously close. What was sacrificed to know the truth? A sudden realization washed over me. I couldn't run forever. That recording might be the last chance I have, a tether connecting me to the unknown. But it also entangled me in something greater than myself, something brewed in deep waters, reluctant to be unveiled. Then the chaos erupted. Sirens blared in the distance, the lights pulsing like fingers reaching through the dark, casting shadows across the walls of the alley. Panic ensued as the men scattered, voices drowning out in the cacophony. Seizing the moment, I slipped out from my hiding place, unsteady on my feet, adrenaline coursing through me. Yet as I emerged, something blurred at the edges of my vision, a figure crashing through the entrance to the alley. I could see Jamie, her eyes wide with fear, rushing toward me. "What happened?" she shouted, breathless. "They were getting close," I replied, my heart pounding. But even as I said it, a deeper unease tugged at me. It felt like we were all just pawns in a game we didn't fully understand. "Alex!" Jamie called, panic flashing in her eyes. "Back there!" I motioned urgently, and together we dove deeper into the tangled streets. All around us the world spun forward, leaving us in the middle of everything unbounded. We were caught, the boundaries of danger, and the whispers intertwining. But a lingering question hung between us. In our search for truth, what would we awaken? That feeling of being watched, it wasn't a question of if, but when. And so we ran, fueled by equal parts fear and determination, uncertain what lay ahead but fully aware that we might never be the same after this night.